Hello, friends, and welcome to today's episode. She knew she was in a lot of trouble. The police officer looked a lot like her, so she knew. The way he held his hands and spoke made it clear what he meant. She told him that her car didn't have anything interesting in it, but he didn't believe her. Now there were a lot of people around them listening in on what they were saying. Soon, everyone would learn something new about their favorite teacher. Sean and Molly's mother, Millie Glynn, raised her twins by herself and worked hard to provide for them. It was hard to work full-time and take care of the 8-year-olds. Millie thought they were worth it, though. She was glad she wasn't by herself, though, because she had Miss Smith, the girls' teacher, with her. She always did her best to help, and she was a great teacher. Millie didn't know what she was hiding, though. Everyone who knew Miss Smith as a teacher was impressed by how well she worked with the kids. Miss Smith seemed to really enjoy teaching her kids, which Millie could see. She had no idea, though, what was really going on behind closed doors. They would soon find out what she was trying to hide. Everyone, including the teachers and the kids, was happy that school was almost over for the summer. She had to drop her kids off at the bus stop before going to work. As her kids hopped to the gate, she saw the smiles on their faces. They were really getting old. Millie thought it would be a normal day like any other when she went to work. That was not going to happen, though. Millie often thought about what her kids were doing at work. They are likely learning something useful that will help them in their schooling. She never thought about what hands she had left them in. She didn't know what she was about to learn about her favorite teacher, though. Soon, everything would be clear. The tutors were what the kids were learning about while Millie was at work. Miss Smith was different because of how she treated people. She must have been the kindest teacher at the school. Everyone loved Miss Smith. Kids, adults, and staff all loved her. When she told everyone her secret, they were all shocked by what the police officer found when he asked to look in her trunk. Millie worked hard all day and then hurried back to pick up her kids from school. To get there on time, she took the highway. She couldn't wait to see their big smiles. But when she got back to school, she saw something that really scared her. Something must be wrong, right? Miss Smith's car had a note on it, which Millie saw. She was sure the car belonged to her. What did it say on it, though? After getting out of her car, Millie walked back to it. She knew what to do after reading it. She grabbed her phone and called 911 while her hands were shaking. Miss Smith was finishing up her lessons for the day at the same time. With a smile on her face, she made herself coffee and sat back down at her desk. Then she heard a knock on her door. "Miss Smith, are you there?" asked a coworker. The door flew open, and her coworker rushed into the room before she could say a word. There was a problem. A coworker told her that there was a police officer in the hallway right behind her. A lump formed in Miss Smith's throat almost right away. What went wrong? There was even more worry for her when she saw that her boyfriend was standing next to the officer when she ran out to meet him. What had taken place? What did Lewis have to do with it? Miss Smith, who had a lump in her throat, asked her boyfriend Lewis what was wrong. He blocked her eyes with his feet and looked at the floor. "Hi, Miss Smith," the police officer said in a strong voice. "My name is Officer Jones." Miss Smith was scared as she looked at the police officer. She had no idea that everything in her life would change in 15 minutes. Miss Smith was even more confused when Officer Jones asked her if she had her car keys. She took them out of her expensive purse and hung them in front of the police officer. Officer Jones told Miss Smith, "Okay, now follow me into the parking lot." They walked out to the front and stood by her car. Her man stayed back. She wasn't sure what was going on. Had her license expired? Police Officer Jones told Miss Smith that his dog had picked up on something strange near her car in the parking lot. This meant that he had to check her trunk. Miss Smith could no longer make sense of anything. But things would work out in a minute or two, and Miss Smith would find out the truth about her car and the police officer. Miss Smith thought she might get a ticket or something worse. She could tell by the officer's sharp eyes, his wide, commanding stance, and the way he spoke. But she didn't know what she did wrong. An empty water bottle or two and a soft blanket were the only things in the car, right? Miss Smith told the police officer he could open the car door and look inside. She turned around in time to see the cop get into her car, and she got ready for the worst. She didn't know what would happen next, though. As Miss Smith watched the police officer look through her trunk, she didn't know what to expect. Miss Smith's heart skipped a beat every time the cop moved. Louis, Miss Smith's boyfriend, looked at her with his bright blue eyes and pulled her close. The worried teacher felt a little better after hearing this. There was trouble ahead, and she really wanted him to save her. But this wasn't going to be easy. As Miss Smith told her boyfriend that she was innocent, tears filled her eyes and made her feel uneasy in the pit of her stomach. But all of a sudden, the cop who was looking through Miss Smith's trunk gasped and fell backwards. What did he find? Miss Smith was about to quick run to her trunk to see what was inside when her boyfriend pulled her back. "Say, what's wrong?" She turned to face him and asked. His eyes showed fear, and she got a chill up her spine. Her life would never be the same after what her boyfriend was about to do. He pulled something out of the trunk, and Miss Smith said, "That's what I thought." The next thing that happened made her fear the worst, but she still couldn't see what it was. The police officer told Louis, "You're going to die for this." He then made Louis get on his knees and put his hands behind his back. He then put handcuffs on him. Miss Smith was getting more and more worried by the second. She was then told to stand in front of Louis while he went back to his car to get his evidence camera. Still, she did what she was told. After that, her whole world turned upside down. Miss Smith's eyes went back and forth between her boyfriend and the police officer. Then she saw Louis take his hands off of his back and put them in front of her, holding a ring. She let out a gasp and put her hands to her face. The police officer who was filming everything began to laugh. Everything had been a trick. The question that all women wanted to be asked was asked by Miss Smith's boyfriend while he was down on one knee. "Will you marry me, love?" he asked with a Hollywood smile that sparkled in the light. He took out a beautiful ring, and Miss Smith started crying with joy. "Yes!" she yelled. She gave her man, who was now engaged, a hug, but Miss Smith didn't understand. Was there anything in her trunk at all? Officer Jones and Millie, who had been a part of this amazing plan from the start, cheered for the happy pair as they hugged and kissed. Millie knew she had to be honest with Miss Smith, though. She took her aside and told her everything. In the morning, Millie saw a note on Miss Smith's car that made her stop in her tracks when she got to school. "It really helped me understand what was going on." She was so moved by it that she called Miss Smith's boyfriend and told him about her plan. But just what did this note say? "Love and live every day like it's your last" was written on the note. It was something Millie always did. She was sure that Miss Smith and her boyfriend were meant to be together. All they needed was a little push. She asked a police officer friend to help with the complicated plan once Miss Smith's boyfriend agreed to ask her to marry him. We could be sure that this plan worked. That's it for today, friends. Please let us know what you think about this story. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you soon for more amazing stories.